All right, 7 o'clock. 7 o'clock on the dot. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for coming to the January 9th Budget Committee meeting for the public hearing of the proposed Nottingham school budget. And before we open, I'd like to stand and do the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. All right. A couple of announcements as we move forward with this meeting. Just wanted to make sure that everyone's aware that electronic copies of the proposed budget can be found on the town website. For any public that decides to join us, there is a sign-in sheet at the back of the room, and we would like it if everybody could sign in. The meeting is televised and recorded. And then if anybody has electronic devices, please silence them for the meeting. We will open this meeting of January 9th, 2018, and I am Mishka Haddock, Chair of the Budget Committee. Peter, if you can introduce the Budget Committee.
Peter White, Budget Committee.
I'm Susan Levinson, School Board Rep.
Carol Murray.
Michael Keister.
Tony Dumas, Select Board Rep.
Les Thompson.
Erin Masqua.
Jen Byron.
And with us from the School Board and SAU, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourselves, please.
Jackie Snow, Nottingham School Board.
Bob Godomsky, Superintendent of Schools.
Marjorie Whitmore, Business Administrator.
Scott Newman, Assistant Superintendent and Student Services Director. Chris Souza, Principal.
All right, welcome everybody. So I'm going to go through just a quick walkthrough of the purpose of the meeting and some of the details with regards to comments and so on and so forth. So the purpose of this hearing is for the public to hear the proposed operating budget for the Nottingham School District and warrant articles for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2018 and ending June 30th, 2019. The Budget Committee has been working with the school district and SAU personnel for the past few months to develop this budget that is being presented this evening. The committee works with the goal of providing Nottingham students with the resources needed for a quality education, but keeping in mind the taxpayers of Nottingham at all times. I will review the budget materials at a high level and allow the school board and SAU representatives to address major changes and decreases on a per section basis. I will also allow questions as we go. The committee members will try to address the questions asked, but we may defer to the school board and SAU representatives for further explanation and more detail. Once we have completed the process, we will close the public comment period and go into a Budget Committee deliberative process. This is where we will take all of the public input into consideration and establish the final budget that will go forward to the school deliberative session. The school deliberative session will be held at the Nottingham School Gymnasium on Tuesday, February 6th at 7 p.m. with a possible snow date of Friday, February 9th at 7 p.m. As I present the budget, I welcome questions that will help us make our final decisions. I ask that you state your name for the record before speaking. Keep in mind that the Budget Committee has had many meetings with the school board and SAU representatives to review the budget and analyze the information, but this is the last opportunity for the public to offer their comments, questions, and input before the committee makes its final vote. Once the final vote is made, the budget becomes the official budgetary document that will go forward to be presented to the town at the deliberative session. Rules for public comment. Basically, the public input will be allowed between each budget category. Please keep comments as brief and to the point as possible. Come forward and speak to the microphone, even if your voice carries. State your full name for the record before beginning. One person speaks at a time. Do not speak unless recognized by the chair. Be civil and respectful of your fellow citizens. No personal attacks. Do not interrupt or use profane language, and direct questions and comments to the chair. The budget synopsis. Basically, before I begin the review, just a quick synopsis of the year's proposed budgets. Two of the traditional largest items in the budget are staff compensation and benefits and high school tuition. Staff compensation and benefit lines saw modest increases due mainly to addition of paraprofessionals, some dental insurance increases, and New Hampshire system rates. The special ed section has also seen an increase due to added staffing brought on by demand and state requirements. The high school tuition has increased relative to an increased number of students attending Co-Brown, as well as tuition increases at both schools. Quickly, for enrollments in the 2018-19 school year, it is estimated that there will be, and correct me if I'm wrong, so 244 high school students, consisting of 170 students attending Co-Brown, 58 students attending Dover High School, and 5 students attending other schools. This is an increase of about 27 students, I believe, over last year's enrollment, and a budgetary allotment to accommodate up to 2 potential move-ins at the Co-Brown tuition rate. So. All right, I'll review the budget section by section and give the school representatives an opportunity to have relevant narrative to inform the public and open the floor to questions and comments. If I'm going too fast or too slow, please let me know. For the school representatives, when discussing particulars, please reference the page and line numbers so that the audience could follow along. And so I will present basically going through using the category number or category name, the number 1100, etc., and then noting the adopted budget for this year, for 17-18, the proposed budget, the increase, monetary increase, as well as the percentage increase for each section. And then we will open each section up for a narrative and public input. And then move on. So, and then we will cover warrant articles at the end and explain the revenues page towards the end. So to begin with, everybody has a copy of the latest budget issued January 5th, 2018. I guess what's the best number to use? Is it the reference number in the top right-hand corner, or is it the date that you have?
Well, there's a report number in the top right, and then the date on the bottom left. I think those two, would you concur?
Okay, so the report number is 17605, just to make sure we're all on the same page. So the first category is regular tuition, category 1100, which begins on page 1 and carries through all the way to page 4, about 3/4 of the way down the page. Total regular education costs, the adopted budget was $3,467,524.40. The proposed budget is $3,504,897.00, an increase of $37,372.60, which equals a 1.08% increase over previous year. Do we have any narrative or comment that the SAU would like to add, or the board, or the school board?
Really, the big piece in here on page 1, if you look down regular education paraprofessional salaries, the board and the administrators are putting in full-day kindergarten for next year. It doesn't raise the number of teachers, but it does. We did put in 2 paraprofessionals that will be dedicated to the kindergarten classroom. So you'll see that on regular education paraprofessional salaries, we've got an increase on that line, which now reads $59,314. The other thing to highlight that you'll see throughout the budget is our health insurance came in at a -2.4, so that's reflected throughout the budget.
Yeah. Nobody is here from the public, so no public input. Any comments from the committee? No? Okay. The next section is special education, 1200. This starts on page 4 and ends on page 6. The total special education was an adopted budget of $1,419,000 $1,011.39. The proposed budget is $1,604,670.00, an increase of $185,658.61 for a percentage increase of 13.08%. Do you have any narrative or comments?
The largest increase in this section is the out-of-district placement on page 5, line 1,200,556,9061, which resulted in an increase of $124,000. And there's a corresponding reduction in uncovered.
Mhm. Thank you. Any other comments? All right, moving on. Total Medicaid, section 1299. This begins on page 6 and ends on page 6. The total Medicaid adopted budget was $4,625.00. The proposed budget is $6,579.00, an increase of $1,954.00, which equals a 42.25% increase.
So actually, when this line goes up, that's sort of good news. Because it's an administration fee of 9.25% that's based off your revenues that you're bringing in from Medicaid to New Hampshire schools. So if you look at the previous years, you can see you brought in more Medicaid billing than expected, so I adjusted that for this budget.
Okay, thank you. Next section, co-curricular, begins on page 6, ends on page 7. Total co-curricular, the adopted budget was $22,236.00. The proposed budget is $23,307.00, an increase of $1,071.00 for a percentage increase of 4.82%. Do you have any?
The increase in that is due to a new computer programming coding club, as well as we're adding some first Lego student information, all based on student interest.
Thank you. Elementary athletic, section 1420, begins on page 7 and ends on page 8. The total athletic adopted budget was $30,135.00. The proposed budget is $32,144.00, an increase of $2,009.00 for a percentage increase of 6.67%. We have comments?
The majority of the increase there is due to officials and referees choose up a little bit every year. And then also it's a uniform year for us for recycling, the uniform cycle replacement, I think it's softball issue.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, moving along. Guidance, section 2120. Guidance starts on page 8 and ends at the top of page 9. Total guidance is adopted budget was $182,387.55. A proposed budget of $183,316.00 for an increase of $928.45 or 0.51%. Comments from, no, straightforward. Yeah. Thank you. The next section is health. Section 2130 begins on page 9 and ends at the top of page 10. The total health adopted budget was $121,047.58. The proposed budget is $100,856.00, a decrease of $20,191.58, or a reduction by 16.68%.
That's centers around the changes of due to a retirement fiscal year 17, so it's a staff change.
Okay. Next section is special contracted services. Section 2140 begins on page 10 and ends on page 10. The adopted budget was $170,475. The proposed budget is $122,811.00. The decrease was $47,664.00, or a decrease of 27.96%.
So that section is really based on your student needs, so you see an increase in your English second language contracted service based on student need, and then a reduction in the behavior technician.
Thank you. The next category is speech, 2150. Begins on page 10, ends on page 11. The adopted budget was $188,212.82. The proposed budget is $172,257.00, for a decrease of $15,955.82, or a percentage drop of 8.48%. I believe that goes right back to
Just personnel changes.
personnel changes, yeah. All right. Improvement of instruction is the next category. Section 2210 begins on page 11 and ends on page 12. The adopted budget was $70,678.00. The proposed budget is $78,178.00, for an increase of $7,500, a percentage increase of 10.61%.
And that's due to our trying to bring the budget in line with actual spending and course reimbursement. If you look at line 01221 5240000, course reimbursement, that's up $5,000 again, trying to bring it in line with the actuals.
Course tuition reimbursement.
In the 2210 section.
And then correct and direct development, the first line, we've added $2,000 to that. We, for the last few years, have continued, 3 years, overpaid that line by using grants and everything else, and a few other sources as well. So again, trying to bring it in line with what we're actually funding.
Thank you. All right, next section is instruction and curriculum development. Section 2212 begins on page 12 and ends on page 13. The adopted budget was $108,243.00. The proposed budget is $109,675.00, an increase of $1,432.00, a percentage change of 1.32%.
That's your curriculum director, high school liaison position, and it's basically just salary and
Salary
benefits and
increase.
those lines.
Thank you. Library and educational media is the next section. Section 2220 begins on page 13 and ends on page 14. The adopted budget was $121,473.26. The proposed budget is $132,346, an increase of $10,872.74, or 8.95%.
The majority of that is due to health insurance changes.
Okay.
You can see, in previous years, there's been a health insurance buyout, which has resulted in a decrease in the health insurance line. And the health insurance line is now up and there's no health insurance buyout.
All right, the following section is computer-assisted instruction. Section 2225 begins on page 14 and ends on page 15. The adopted budget was $42,354.00. The proposed budget is $38,471.00, a decrease of $3,883.00, or a drop of 9.17%. Want to make some comments?
The bulk of that increase is due to our internet access going up. Access fee in the past, 30 megabytes per second, was $100 per month. Moving up to 100 megabytes per second, got informed of the increases that we've been looking at. At first, we thought it would be around 1,400 a month. That was the quote we had from Fairpoint. We've been able to now get a quote from them around 850 with an installation fee of 1,100 to go to 100. So that was nice. That came down. Then on the second page, under network software, we have to upgrade. We're finished a 3-year contract for our antivirus software. So between our some new software for our AeroHive hubs, the wireless hubs that allow us to communicate throughout the building, as well as our web to school, our antivirus update, there's almost a $3,000 increase in that.
Thank you.
Over the last few years, the school board as well as the community has been very generous with technology, and we've made great strides in our building. So you can see there are some corresponding decreases on page 14 at the bottom. There's a decrease of almost $14,000 in new equipment, as well as replaced technology equipment on the next page, on page 15. So continue to look at the technology. As I said, we've made great strides in the last few years and felt that those reductions would be acceptable for this year.
All right. The following section is other support services and instructional staff. Section 2290 begins on page 15 and ends at the top of page 16. The adopted budget was $103,645.00. The proposed budget is $103,389.00, a decrease of $256, or 0.25%.
Really nothing.
Yeah, no major changes there, insurance related and so on. The next section, school board services, section 2310, begins on page 16 and ends on page 16. The adopted budget was $71,427.00. The proposed budget is $64,428.00, a decrease of $6,999.00, or 9.80%. Decrease.
One of the biggest decreases in that section, you can see halfway up the page, contracted services, attorney and negotiator. We were trying to get those back more in line of actuals. We've been doing really well with that, so we've reduced that by $7,000.
Excellent. All right, anybody else? Questions, anything? No? SAU expenses is the next category, 2320. Begins on page 16, ends at the top of page 17. The proposed or adopted budget was $453,467.00. The proposed budget is $481,218.00, for an increase of $27,751.00, or 6.12%.
The largest piece of that increase is an addition of a part-time tech support person at the SAU. Over the last few years, we have gone from no tech support to a contracted service we've been utilizing, and we felt that it would be more beneficial cost-wise and efficiency-wise of having our own part-time tech support person, so that's in the budget.
Next category is the principal's office. Section 2410 begins on page 17 and ends on page 18. The adopted budget was $378,187.00. The proposed budget is $381,658.00, an increase of $3,471 or 0.92%. Anything in particular we need to?
There's a change in health insurance and salary and benefits, so.
Thank you. The following section is total elementary bookkeepers. Section 2510 begins and ends on page 18. This is just I believe a line item holder, right? So it's just $1. Yeah, just a placeholder. So adopted budget was $1, proposed budget's $1, no increase, no changes. It's just to maintain the category within the budget. So, the following category is operation of maintenance of plant. Section 2620 begins on page 18 and ends on page 21. The total for operating of and maintenance of plant, the adopted budget was $476,361.00. The proposed budget is $549,421.00, an increase of $73,060.00 or 15.34%.
So as our building ages, we need to continue to make sure we're upkeeping it, paying a lot of attention to how to maintain all the structures within the building. Most of the increases, the smaller increases, are due to contractual obligations such as the lawn care, contracted services around testing and electricity, things like that. The larger increases, the largest one is around repairs and maintenance, which is on the top of page 20. And that really, the bulk of that increase, aside from doing some window repair, a few other things around the building, is almost a $17,000 flush out of glycol. Glycol is a chemical within the water that's in the heating system that stops things from freezing. It also keeps the pressure up. It needs to be replaced and flushed out annually, as well as a new inhibitor, which continues to again, allows us to keep the building at a proper level. And then there's a few other pieces of equipment, a tractor, with the snowfalls we've had to replace. We want to make sure we safely take care of that, staff and students.
And of course, propane.
Insurance as well, so there's a change for us with insurance
Yeah,
there
maintenance, health insurance.
for almost $15,000.
And the propane contract.
Also, yeah, on page 21, you can get your propane cost at the top of the page that we look out and see the cost.
$1,000 increase.
That's always a moving target. If you look back at the actuals on the left side of that page, it's all over the place.
Yeah. Thank you. The next category is transportation. Section 2700 begins on page 21, ends on page 22. The adopted budget was $567,223.00. The proposed budget is $544,837.00, a decrease of $22,386.00, or a drop by 3.95%. This was, again, based on special ed and.
Yeah, this was put out to bid, and you can see the price on page 21. Elementary school transportation, that's for 8 buses, with an increase of $16,143. On the next page, you've got a savings of $44,847 for the special education transportation elementary, and that's based on need.
And also the two, the active kindergarten buses are not in that as well.
Correct.
Oh, right, yeah.
There's a savings there as well, because our transportation did go up more than 4%.
Right.
So the lack of those buses is offsetting the increase for the transportation.
Thank you. The following category, transfer to food service. Again, just well, actually, there's no dollar amount, so it's not a placeholder. But I'll name it since it's there. Section 5251, total transfer of food service. The adopted budget was $0, proposed budget $0, increase of $0. And so, am I to assume that'll be gone next year? That whole section?
No.
Okay.
So basically what happens is at the end of every year, the food service program in the school experiences a loss.
Mhm.
And that money is transferred from the general fund to the food service fund. In prior years, when we originally started here, we tried getting the budget committee to budget for $25,000, but some people had the thought that we were double dipping, but we're not. We just simply don't bring in enough revenue to cover the expenses in the cafeteria.
So at the end of the year, you just do an adjusting entry because by law, we're not allowed to run a deficit in the
Correct.
food service section.
Right, okay.
So the
Correct.
general fund just covers that deficit. Then it's a journal entry at the end of the year.
Yeah, so at the end of every year, I have to make a journal entry to make, the financial,
Make
to
it
be able
whole.
to close out for the Department of Education.
Okay. The following section is food service. Section 5220 begins on page 22 and ends on page 23. The total food service adopted budget was $180,724.00. The proposed budget is $167,453.00, a decrease of $13,271.00, or 7.34%. Most of that comes from,
One of the decreases on page 22, you'll see the health insurance, which is a change in plan and salaries. You've also got a little further down, you got health insurance buyout, which showed a slight increase, so that's good news. And on the next page, page 23, you'll see that there was a decrease in food and milk. That was trying to reflect more towards the actuals of the last few years.
thank you. So the total elementary costs line, which is on page 23, the adopted budget was $8,179,438.00. The proposed budget is $8,401,912.00, an increase of $222,474.00, or 2.72%. We saw that in most of these previous categories. Any comments that you wanted to add to that line, or?
Well, just to keep in mind that includes 2 collective bargaining agreements that are in place
Right.
for our teachers and our support staff. So that's obviously a good portion of the 2.72.
Right. All right. The next category is high school regular education, begins on page 23 and ends on page 24. The total high school regular education adopted budget was $3,222,932.00. The proposed budget is $3,631,966.00, an increase of $409,034.00, or 12.69%.
The largest piece here is an increase in student enrollment. There was obviously a percentage increase in your Dover tuition and Co-Brown tuition that's figured in here as well. But you have more high school students.
Yes, as noted by my comments earlier. Significant increase in the class sizes. So, high school special education is the next category, section 1200. The category begins on page 24, ends on page 25. Total high school special education, adopted budget was $419,342. The proposed budget is $393,238. The decrease is $26,104, or 6.2%.
A lot of those reductions are based on student needs, student graduating, coming in closer on evaluating the tiers of Dover.
Thank you. The following category, high school contracted service, begins on page 25, ends on page 25. The total for high school contracted service, adopted budget was $1,470. Proposed budget, $1,479, an increase of $9, or 0.61%.
That's just the portion of the Stratford Learning Center membership that applies to grade 9 through 12.
The next category, high school speech, section 2150, begins on page 25 and ends on page 25. Total high school speech, the adopted budget, $1,500. The proposed budget, $9,268.00, an increase of $7,768.00, or 517.87%.
When your students starting attended,
It's a scary number.
Student enrollment at Co-Brown was lower. Your special education students in need for speech services. The cost of those services were covered by the other two towns, and then I would bill back. You've gotten to the point now where it calculated how many students to service hours, and it was able to split it more equitably between the three towns, so that's why you see your increase, because you have more.
We have more students.
You have more special education students.
Okay. Thank you. Next category, high school transportation, section 2700, begins on page 25, ends on page 26. Total high school transportation, the adopted budget was $216,322.00. The proposed budget, $263,396.00, an increase of $47,000 and $47,074.00, for 21.76%.
We continue to offer 2 buses to Dover and 2 buses to Phil Brown for our high school students. The present transportation contract is expiring at the end of the 17-18 school year, and this represents a new contract.
All right. Total high school costs on page 26. The adopted budget was $3,861,566. The proposed budget is $4,299,347, an increase of $437,781, or $437,781, an increase of 11.34%.
If you can just keep in mind, and the general public, when you have your own high school and you get 20 additional students in your high school, oftentimes you can filter those kids into your high school and it won't cost any increase in staffing. In your particular case, you tuition every student out to high school, so every one of those 20 students costs in the neighborhood of $14,000 to $16,000. So that's a cost as your high school enrollment goes up. There's a corresponding cost to that, and the other piece of that is your new transportation contract.
Thank you. So this is a grand total of The adopted budget was $12,041,004.00. The proposed budget is $12,701,259.00, an increase of $660,255.00, or 5.48%. Anybody want to make any comments?
If I could just a reminder again, if you look at your total high school expenses at 11.34%, and then you look at your total elementary expenses at 2.2%. Really the control that the school board and the administration has over the budget is that elementary budget. So it's always a challenge when you get an increase in the number of students you have at the high school level and an increase in a transportation contract at the high school level and at the elementary level, of trying to balance that, of being fiscally responsible when not loading it on the back of your elementary school.
Thank you. The next category says transfer to capital reserve fund, section 5251, begins and ends on page 26. The adopted budget was $70,000. The proposed budget is $0. The increase, or the decrease is $70,000 for a 100% decrease in the total transfer to capital reserve funds.
And that is something that's determined on voting day with all the warrant articles.
Right.
So you'll see your building capital reserve fund, your grounds capital reserve fund, and your textbook capital reserve fund that are presented in your warrant articles tonight. So if those get passed at the budget, at the voting day, then those will then be added into your proposed budget.
Okay.
If there's available fund balance.
If there's available fund balance.
Excellent. Any other comments that the SAU or school board wants to put in, or the budget committee?
I just have one question. What size increases the town of Northwood seeing in their high school budget? I mean, obviously, most of the 660,000 is going to Northwood, so imagine, is their budget going down or not going up much, or, I mean, where's all that money going?
It's interesting because again, they've got the same dilemma as you have, is they tuition all of their high school students out as well. So it's just based on number of students and your transportation as far as your high school budget goes.
I think you're referring to Co-Brown as Northwood.
Yes.
So Northwood Co-Brown came in at 3.9% increase, and Dover came in at an estimated 5.68, but that is still under negotiation. So what you're really seeing is, if you look at the percentages over the last 10 years or so, they're pretty static, really. You don't see many. With Co-Brown, you see pretty steady, 2, 3, 4 maybe. It's a little more volatile on the other side, but we have more students going, so that's really what's driving it. It's just that increased enrollment is what's driving that number, I think, primarily.
Yeah, I follow that, but clearly they're benefiting from our increased enrollment at their school by quite a bit.
Yep. And we're gonna have this issue continuing. It's going to be an issue for the school boards in the future as well, because our grade 4 and up, we have large populations. So as those grades graduate and go through, you're going to see that elevated enrollment to either high school, but you're going to be subject to that tuition. So we will see this area continuing to, I think, hold steady for the next 3 or 4 years, or go up.
One thing that was mentioned was that if we, as with our elementary school, that we have more control over in cost, that if in high schools, we have to pay the contracted rate going to the high school. And you mentioned if we had our own high school, perhaps we could absorb these new students as part of the structure that's in place. Is it possible at a certain point, in terms of the number of students that go to one of these high schools, that we reach a point where we just pay the marginal cost of an additional student? as opposed to the full cost that's been paid on student number one and through a certain number.
So
Does
just
that make
that,
any sense?
yeah, don't you just clarify it a little bit? You're saying, as we continue to pay tuition, you just want to see that differential piece?
Well, it would be, there are certain fixed costs
Right.
that you have to have if you're going to have a high school.
Oh, okay.
And after you reach a certain number of students, you've covered those fixed costs, and now it's just your marginal cost of what this one student adds in terms of cost. Just as you mentioned that if we had in elementary school, we can absorb additional students as part of the infrastructure.
Right.
Can we carry that over in our negotiations with the high schools rather than paying the full cost, the fully loaded cost of a student? Just pay, what is the incremental cost of adding this one student
Okay.
to your school as opposed to a fully loaded cost? So we may commit to say X number of students, and we will pay this amount for X number of students. Every student beyond that is at a lower rate.
That would be an interesting negotiation, and I think right now we have the methodology Dover sends us as well as Co-Brown. They have a facilities piece in there as well, so they have a formula for it, but this,
Yeah, you're under tuition contracts right now, that run a length of time, 7 to 10 years. It's an interesting piece of negotiations, but to be honest, I would not, I wouldn't think that that would be very successful to do it that way, because I don't believe that the other schools would enter into that type of an agreement. Because they're providing, like if we take Dover or Raymond or any other school around, they're providing an education for their particular students of their town, and anybody coming in, I would be surprised. I think that's a great idea, and I think it would be a great benefit to Nottingham, but I would be surprised if a school district would negotiate that way.
you know, one key difference too between the schools, each of them has a slightly different financial structure, where Dover has a tax base and they raise through taxation. Co-Brown does not raise any money through taxation, so their revenue stream is simply tuition based. So that would be a bit of a difference as well in how we could approach that.
But based on what you're telling me, if I'm hearing you correctly, is we don't have a lot of leverage, and we just have to pay them what they charge us.
I wouldn't go that far and say we have to pay them what they charge us, because I do think you have a bit of leverage, because you're sending a substantial number of students to any particular school. So if you look at, I'm just taking a round figure, $15,000 a head. I mean, obviously, if you're sending 20 students there, that's $300,000. So you've got a leverage piece that way. But as for leveraging it enough to only pay the increment of the actual cost, I wish you luck. That would be
No,
great.
and I think that
But
really is the
I
key,
don't think it would go to that extent.
is just
Like
being
the
convinced that we're fully leveraging
Right.
what we have to leverage, which is a certain number of students that covers a percentage of their fixed cost. Because as you mentioned, once you reach a certain level, a lot of those additional costs can be absorbed, and we'd like to have some of that benefit ourselves.
And actually, in the last negotiations with Co-Brown, your school board did leverage the number of students that we're sending there, because for the first 2 years of the contract, there was a percentage decrease, a savings that was realized. That ran out, so it's not gonna be in next year's budget, but there was 2 years worth of it.
33% year one and 2.5% year two.
Okay,
So that savings
Okay.
was leveraged.
sure.
For the term of the contract or the
For the
agreement.
first 2 years, we had a three.
Right, but it's for, it was the first 2 years of a 10-year agreement or whatever that was put in place? Okay,
7 year.
or 7-year agreement?
Yeah.
Okay.
One other piece that we have, it might be minor, but we do have a seat on the education committee at Co-Brown. And in that way, you look at hires and so forth. So we do have a small role in mitigating some costs and having a say in some of that structure.
Okay, thank you.
All right. The next item, I believe, is the warrant articles. which we will go over, and I will skip over any warrant articles that do not have a budgetary impact, which is namely 1, 3, 5, and 6. But wanted to go over warrant Article 2, which explains the definition of the, or goes over the default budget. So I'll read the article in its entirety, and then open it up for narrative and comment. So Article 2 is, shall the Nottingham School District raise and appropriate as an operating budget, not including appropriations by special warrant articles and other appropriations voted separately, the amounts set forth on the budget proposed with the warrant or as amended by vote of the first session for the purposes set forth therein, totaling $12,701,259. Should this article be defeated, the default budget shall be $12,679,654, which is the same as last year, with certain adjustments required by previous action of the Nottingham School Board or by law, or the governing body may hold one special meeting in accordance with RSA 40-13, Roman numeral X and XB1, to take up the issue of a revised operating budget only. So as one can see, the difference between the two budgets is very minimal. Operating budget versus, or the proposed budget versus the default budget. Any comment or narrative from the SAU or questions from the committee?
Well, you can see that the challenge is that there's, your default budget is demonstrating the increase of the mandated increases. And, you know, if you look at the proposed budget, like you said, it's minimal after that.
Yeah.
You know, the administration and the school board was very cognizant of the collective bargaining agreements that are in place, the transportation, the increase in the high school tuition, you know, all of the costs that are mandated and we don't have a lot of control over, we have no control over. So they were very diligent in scrutinizing the rest of the budget.
Mm-hmm. And just for, to add to that, the proposed budget is an increase of 5.48%. The default budget would be an increase of 5.30%. So again, just a 18.18% difference between the two budgets. Any questions or comments from committee? Warrant Article 3 is the next one that has a oh no, I'm sorry. That one does not have, it's warrant Article 4, has a budget impact. Article 4 reads, to see if the Nottingham School District will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $30,000 for the purpose of improvements to the library program. The tax impact, if this article passes, is 0.05 cents per $1,000. Did anybody want to have any comments?
And that's 5 cents per thousand, because that's a dollar.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, 5 cents per thousand.
So we've been looking at making some improvements to our library for the last few years, really investigating how a library has shifted and changed based on 21st century skills and the needs of students in the K-8 building. Some of the things we've talked about through this process with you folks is the idea of, for instance, the furniture. It hasn't been changed in 20 years, the same furniture that was there. When you think of how we educate students to grades K, we have large furniture in that room that's difficult to move around, so there's not a lot of space. How you would educate a group of kindergarten students, where it's reading books and the movement breaks you put in place is very different than how you would educate a group of 7th or 8th grade students. So we're looking for things to help make it in line with a kind of a movement called library commons or learning commons. which allows for more flexible spacing within a library. It includes multimedia, not just technology, but maker spaces that involve, what we might think of as arts and crafts in a sense, but has more of an engineering flair in making things that move, and using things such as cardboard, glue, and rubber bands. We want to have room and spaces to do that. We need to be able to move the furniture around. We need to be able to have technology in the room that allows students to collaborate, but not be just sitting on a computer piece. So we don't need desks with computers. We need a mobile cart of, say, iPads or computers where the students can use it as needed. The carpet hasn't been replaced in quite some time, so we know that there's some things in the building that we have to work on. We are still investing in our books. We feel very strongly about the use of books in our library. In order to help maintain that, we're looking for air conditioning. We've talked about the moisture leading to poor air quality, damaging books, the technology as well as the carpets and things in there. So it would go a long way to preserve that by having AC. So this $30,000, for the most part, is looking at funding an air conditioning system, new furniture, and some technology.
Great, thank you. All right, the next section that we want to cover is the revenues, and to go through the tax rate. So, yes.
Could we go back through Articles 3, 5, and 6 as well? Because although they don't have a direct cost impact on the appropriation, they do have an indirect cost impact on the taxpayer, in that that's dollars that wouldn't be returned to the town. So
That's
we
something
take a
you
look
can
at
do,
those.
right? Sure,
I think we do need to, as a committee, vote on those when it comes time to.
Yes, which we will do
So,
later, so,
yeah, if we
okay. Absolutely. So Article 3 reads, to see if the Nottingham School District will vote to raise and appropriate up to the sum of $50,000 to be added to the Building Repair Capital Reserve Fund previously established. This sum to come from June 30th, 2018 unassigned fund balance available for transfer on July 1st. No additional amount to be raised from taxation. Current anticipated balance at 12/31/2017 is $86,364.52. The school board recommends this appropriation by a 5-0 vote. The budget committee has not voted on this, and there, as of yet, there is no additional tax impact if this article passes. Article 5 reads, to see if the Nottingham School District will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of up to $15,000 to be added to the Grounds Improvement Capital Reserve Fund previously established. This sum is to come from June 30th, 2018 unassigned fund balance available for transfer on July 1st. Current anticipated balance as of 12/31/2017 is $28,122.88. The school board recommends this appropriation by a 5-0 vote, and there's no additional tax impact if this article passes. The last article is Article 6, to see if the Nottingham School District will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of up to $20,000 to be added to the Textbook Capital Reserve Fund previously established. This sum to come from June 30th, 2018 unassigned fund balance available for transfer on July 1st. No additional amount to be raised from taxation. Current anticipated balance at 12/31/17 is $40,024.15. The school board recommends this appropriation by a vote of 5-0. And again, no additional tax impact if this article passes.
For the building capital reserve fund, is there a goal in terms of the amount that you want to eventually get to for that reserve?
I'm trying to close the gap
Article 3.
between our capital improvement program. Jackie was our representative on that this year, so she can speak to it as well. But we have an aging building, and it's more, I think, efficient to have this appropriately funded. And I think, what would you think for a target? We could easily be up around 150, I think. Or even higher.
$300,000 over the next 5-6 years worth of work that could affect the building, and also some of the grounds in terms of replacement of roofs and air handlers, paving, other additional money of about $25,000 if approved and by the voters, and we will fund balance into this capital reserve fund. At one point, we thought about perhaps raising it to $75,000, but thought that might be too much of a jump for one particular year. We figured to bring it up to $50,000, see how the community reacts to that, continue to assess our CIP capital improvement plan, and then see if $15,000 was a decent amount to increase that based on the planned, expenditures to capital assets of the district.
And the school still has original windows. The HVAC system on the roof is actually 10 years older than the school, we recently found out, so those were put on, they were already 10. So those are the kinds of things we've been trying to replace piecemeal.
Mhm.
If you look at the CIP plan, some of the costs there, they range anywhere from $50,000 to $400,000 replacement fees. Roofs are not inexpensive, as well as the heating systems, and those are some of the things that we're going to be looking at in the near future.
Help me with my recollection. In an earlier meeting, I think it was mentioned that we've had situations where that if our tax revenue exceeded our expenses over a period of a few years, that could and has lowered our taxes in a given year because part of that expense was covered from taxation from a previous year. Is that true? Am I recalling that correctly?
You mean paying down the taxes from?
Well, paying, I think Tom mentioned that, I don't know, the figure was like $250,000 or something like that, that was taken from taxing that exceeded the expenses
Right.
in some years.
Right.
And so as a result of that, our tax rate in a given year was lower because part of that expense was covered from previous years.
Right.
So tell me if I'm understanding this correctly. You mentioned that there's no effect on taxation, or maybe that would suggest that no additional taxing is going to occur, but is it possible that if these articles that you just mentioned, that if it was a vote of no on that it could conceivably lower our taxes from what they would have been because of an overage that is
I don't think
no
it
longer
wouldn't.
spent. So that's what I'm trying to understand. Is it possible that if we voted no on this, that it could conceivably lower our taxes?
That is true, because there's a timing issue, so at this time, there's no additional tax increase, but to the extent that we do take these funds from an unexpended balance, then there's less to return
Right.
to the tax base. And when they calculate the tax rate in November, they will take into consideration those extra funds.
So it's possible that it could lower the tax rates if
It's a
these
timing
funds are
issue,
not-
Next
yeah,
year.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
I guess it's all a matter of timing because it's already been taxed. You're looking at an overtax, if you will.
Right.
And those monies haven't been expended, so now they're looking to set those monies aside to use them for future repairs, future encumbrances that will come onto the school without adding an additional tax to the taxpayers versus giving it back to the taxpayers and then next year saying, oh, now we need to raise 300,000. So now
Right.
you're adding that tax burden back onto the taxpayers, and it kind of, I guess, spreads it out, if you
Yeah,
will.
it does smooth it a bit.
Yeah, avoids some of the humps and bumps that Chris was talking about.
You all concur with that? It's a
Right,
timing
which
issue.
is why you develop a capital improvement plan for just that,
Right.
to smooth it out and not have the peaks and valleys.
Right.
You bring up a point that's correct, that if it's turned back to the taxpayers, it will reduce your taxes initially, but without loading the capital reserves in the long run, sooner or later, these things have to be paid for. So in the future, you would have those big spikes when you've got a $300,000 roof or something like that coming in.
And it makes total sense to me to try and phase it, but it does have a tax impact in a given year. It may not be the right thing to do, but it does, if I'm understanding correctly.
Yeah, that's been a discussion in every district, every year. People ask that question. There is no new additional tax. I mean, that's how it's listed, that's how DRA wants it listed on there. But you're right, if it goes back, then it could be utilized to offset that.
Okay.
I think the DRA will actually argue that they don't want to see that language on there at all. even when it comes to Article 2, where it says the estimated tax impact if this warrant article passes is, what did we say it was?
5 cents.
5 cents.
5 cents for the other one, but I can't remember what this one was.
Oh.
But, because that's one of the things that just got, the other school districts in trouble, such as Pembroke. Because they put that on there, and then now they're not getting the revenue that they anticipated, so now the tax impact has been immensely affected over there. So when I called the DRA and asked them about that, because we had asked them about possibly putting in there, if the proposed budget passes, it's going to be 15 cents per 1,000. If the default warrant article passes, it's going to be 12 cents per 1,000. And she immediately said, I don't like that wording at all, so, because that's what can get you in trouble moving forward.
Right, so you have to remember they're really all estimates, and a shortage of revenue, by default, it's gonna have an impact on your tax rate. You're gonna run a deficit in some cases, and so I think that's what happened at Pembroke, is that they were looking at tuition revenues that didn't occur, so you're gonna get hit. It's just gonna be a byproduct that your tax rate will definitely, your estimate will be off because your revenue estimate was off or not realized.
From an administrative standpoint, most town staff, as they use school staff, don't really like this language because it is misleading. There's the idea that you're using current year property values, you're estimating your revenues a year out. You don't know what's gonna happen. I mean, you could have a huge surge and get 100 houses in town that could drastically change the property values. So it's an estimate. We put it out there, and I think that's what you'll all hear us say. It's an estimate. It's only an estimate. And when people call the town office and say, well, you said the town was only gonna go up X amount of dollars, we say, yep, and that was an estimate.
Right.
So it's nice to show people what the potential is, but it's not totally realistic because we just don't know all the other factors that come into play.
No, it makes sense. Thank you.
We've been lucky that it's gone the right way for us, and we've had surplus to return, and it's brought our estimates down. You can see Dawn has some experience with the DRA. She used to work there, so.
Speaking about surplus, unlike a town that can keep a general fund balance, at the end of the year, we cannot keep any remaining funds. As Dawn can be in these capital reserve funds. So in terms of the bank accounts or what's in the bank for a rainy day or emergencies, what you're seeing that the school has is listed right here, plus just the addition of that one additional a few years ago. There was a new statute put in place where the voters decided to take 2.5% of your net assessment value, and the voters decided to allow us to take up to 1.5%. And 2 years ago, we put $60,000 into an emergency account that there were catastrophic spending issues during the year. We can work with the DRA to access those funds.
We got to.
Typically, what the school has in reserve, you're seeing it listed here, plus that one additional $60,000 or so.
Isn't there a special education reserve?
Yes, that one as well, thank you.
We didn't need to increase.
And really,
it.
my big point is that,
Put it in there.
I think it's important that we acknowledge that we're not taking these expenses lightly just because it doesn't require another taxation. That it's still money to be spent.
It's and it's money to be spent, and it was taxed to the residents last year versus the coming year, and either way you're getting hit. So.
You're exactly right, if you didn't go in here and it was available, you go back to the town to offset those.
Right.
Can I ask a question in regards to setting up a warrant article or just kind of general conversation? We always have that move-in line where we're always aiming at 2 or 4 and we know we have more coming down. Is there a way of setting up a warrant article and reserving like 1 or 2 move-ins and just kind of slowly building that up so we get to maybe 5 move-ins and then we can just remove that line from the budget altogether?
We could do that. Northwood School District did that, and so you could just set up another capital reserve fund, and the funds would go in and offset any of those issues.
Northwood has one set up for 10 students.
Okay.
And last year, we actually saw 16 students move in during the year. That was $250,000 of their budget. Luckily, we did not have to tap into that capital reserve fund balance. If we needed to, it was there.
Right.
But, you know, we're trying to keep that 10 student ratio in that capital reserve fund, just in case there does come a time where we have building problems. Could be, you could see an extra 25 students move in, I mean, at that point. So, I mean, that money is still there, so.
Yeah, I was just wondering, because I mean, we have a lot of homes coming in, a lot of developments, things along those lines. Just the increased class sizes, things along those lines. I'm just wondering if there's a way to kind of, the rainy day fund for that. Just mention.
Yeah, but you mentioned that fund, like, being able to use it for something else. Wouldn't it be strictly for move-ins?
Yeah,
It was for move-ins.
It was, so it was strictly
Well,
for
not
move-ins?
move-ins, but for tuition.
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 so you
High
have,
school tuition.
the school board has control as a bottom line budget to expand the number that's in their budget. The tuition capital reserve is just for tuition.
Mhm.
So what we were able to do in Northwood last year was to tighten up the regular budget to a point where we covered those move-ins, so we didn't have to overexpend the budget to tap into the capital reserve.
And how has that worked for their proposed budgets, in a sense? I mean, because I know that this move-in line has always been, it's always been a topic of conversation for us in the last couple of years as to how many do we, I think we had 6 2 years ago, and now we're down to 2. So how, you know.
About 5 years ago, when I started, we budgeted for 5 unanticipated move-ins.
Right.
And then over the years, that was the discussion of, you know, you're asking for 5 and you don't know you're gonna get 5, and that's an extra $75,000 in the budget, and that was the conversation that led to starting the capital reserve account for the tuition. So now presently, we budget to the number. What we have for enrollment as far along in the budget process as we get, we adjust it accordingly right to the number. Our homeschool students we budget for that say they're coming in, and then, you know, we've got that capital reserve account just in case.
Maybe it would make sense when we have the small class sizes roll through to set up a warrant article at that point, because then we'd have less.
That would be about the 4th grade right now is gonna be the big peak.
It's the big,
And then we
yeah.
kind of start going down the hill again.
But that would be a
Most
good way to do
classes,
it,
yeah.
because as your high school enrollment comes down, obviously, you're gonna realize a savings with those number of students, so that'd be a good time to start.
When none of us are still on
Believe it when I see it.
As I recall, that actually was proposed as one of the options maybe 3 or 4 years ago when we were talking about how to more closely manage the high school tuition budget. And the school board apparently opted for the distinct number of move-ins on the budget as a line instead of the capital reserve fund. They did have that option on their table to look at, and chose the other. This one's working right now, but
I think we're on a steady climb of enrollment, so it might not work out just yet.
Right. Definitely a lot closer to where we wanted to be or needed to be than in the past, so. All right, any other questions or items people want to cover? All right, revenues. The tax rates are based on the assessed valuations of the town. The current valuation is $611,779. Each $1 change in the tax rate raises $611,779.12. The amount to be raised by taxation is the total budget minus grants, state funds, and revenues, and is divided into that number to determine the change in the overall tax rate. Warrant articles by law define their specific impact on the tax rate directly on the ballot, and in your copies as well. So basic calculations, and I'll try to review these. So the school district rate as set by the DRA with change from the previous year, plus any state education tax rate with change from the previous year. equals your net tax rate for education. Then the school board proposed budget, which is not as of yet approved by the budget committee, subtracts the state of New Hampshire adequacy grant, subtracts the state of New Hampshire education tax, subtracts the estimated revenues, and that equals the net budget to be raised by total taxation. Net budget, we then add the state education tax rate, which gives you a total estimated tax rate, not including any separate or special warrant articles. The warrant articles, as we mentioned, Article 2 is the proposed budgets, as well as the default budget, and then Article, is it 4, with a 5 cent per thousand increase to taxation from the previous year. So the final, we're now at the final chance for the public to have any input with regards to the budget. Unfortunately, nobody's here other than the committees. So having no further input, do I have a motion to adjourn the, well, actually, I should go through the revenue page and the proposed tax page. You each have a copy of the revenue page with you, I believe. It's the working draft number 1. The total estimated revenue for 2018 and 2019 is $263,529. The total operating appropriation is $12,701,259. This does not include any special or separate warrant articles, and gives us an estimated tax rate for 2018 of $16.11 per thousand for the Nottingham School District. Did I cover that correctly? Yes. Any comments or questions? Or I didn't make any errors.
I'm a little foggy on this, because I honestly don't remember how you reviewed it really well last year.
We do it once a year, Tony.
Yeah, I know.
I don't expect you to remember.
I remember this question, yeah.
On the other page, we have an estimated 2018 school tax rate of $18.01 per thousand. And on the revenue sheet, $16.11. Which is it? That's where I'm foggy.
You have the 1806. Oh no, 1801. I see where you're at here.
1877 versus 1611.
Oh, I see what you're saying, yep, sorry, I didn't see that. Nope, I think that's just a formula error, Tony. I think that should be 1801.
So the estimated tax rate should be 1801
Correct.
on the
Sorry,
revenue.
if you look on the first page,
But each one is different.
Yeah, they're all different.
17
So
is
these equal just the school district tax
Okay.
rate. So maybe it
Thank
should
you.
be
the
15.
page that I typically go by is
1577.
the first page, the one that's landscape.
Yeah, you got it.
So that one says 1801.
Right.
So the one on the second page, that's just supplemental information that I give everybody. So that 2018 for 1611 should be 1801. Because it's a 1.75 per thousand increase.
Should it be 1577? Because it looks like the prior years are just that school district tax rate row, not including the state education tax rate. Like the 1408.
I don't have it on me, you might be right, I'm not sure. I would have to go back and look, but 1408, and, yep, it looks like you're right. Sorry. It was just a supplemental thing I was trying to put together
No problem.
for everybody to make it easier, maybe I just made it more complicated.
And what that bottom part is showing there on the fiscal year, is the estimated return to town, the actual.
percent increase.
Just seeing that first row is what was estimated during this process here. And then based on the closing of fiscal year and the dollars are returned to the town, that is how those return dollars are impacting reducing the tax rate. So you're kind of seeing how the estimate, end up at that estimate.
Right.
Because if the fiscal year closes, there's available fund balance returned to the town to reduce the tax rate.
And kind of give you a history of what we've returned back to the town over the past 5 years.
20%.
I think this isn't right. I think that should be 16. I think these are not, none of these are right. These are just these, they don't include the state education rate. So they should be
I'm clear on
these.
that.
Well, Tony's clear, but I think everybody else is not
Yeah,
confused.
I'm a little, okay.
Does it make sense now?
So looking at the landscape one, maybe we can just run through that one?
So, this-
Would you mind? Okay. These, we think these are.
It is, it's just a formula thing over here.
On which one? On the,
Right, it's
the
just
working
On the
draft?
portrait page, yeah.
It's just historical data.
Okay. So just to really get at the heart of the tax rate calculation, I think this, the landscape
Yep,
one
so at
works.
the top, you can see the 2015 school tax rate by the district rate and the state education rate, and then for the total. So you can see 15, 16, 17, 18. Above that, one of the things that we touched on with Don earlier is the 2017 net assessed evaluation.
Right.
Again, we don't know what that amount is going to be next year. That is set October, November next year. So I'm kind of trying to estimate what it's going to be based off the current evaluations. So down below that, you'll see the 2018-19 school board's budget, $12,701,259, less the state of New Hampshire adequacy grant, which is $1.4 million, less the state of New Hampshire education tax, which is the 1.338, and that's going to be $2.24 per thousand. Then the less estimated revenues, which is on your attached page for 263,529. And when you subtract those out, you get the 18-19 net budget to be raised by local taxation for $9,648,285 for 15.77 per thousand. So your total to be raised by local taxation is going to go up by 1.69 per thousand. And your state education tax rate is going to increase by 0.06 cents. For a total of 1801.
So if I'm just kind of seeing the big picture here, this is a rate of increase that we've not seen for a few years. I don't know when it was seen previously, but we've not seen it recently. In terms of the amount of increase. And I'm asking the question, what is driving that increase? Is it the number of students, increase in number of students specifically in high school?
It's your net assessed valuation. If that goes up or down, that's going to change your tax rate as well as,
Say that once again?
your net assessed valuation for your town.
Dividing into that number, so the higher it goes, the better it is for you, because you're dividing into it.
For the town, okay, gotcha.
But the lower it goes, the more impact you're going to see.
Yeah.
And we also don't know right now how much we're going to return to the town. It could be 200,000, it could be 3 or 4. It depends on what's going to happen with our revenue through the remainder of the year. If we're going to see any more move-ins into the district, if we're gonna have more tuition costs, any benefit changes, any salary changes, anything like that that's going to impact us before we get to the end of the year.
But driving this one, I think one of the discussions that we had at one of our last meetings was some downshifting. I think we had 100,
Yeah.
go ahead,
Right, Marjorie, yeah.
130.
Over about
Correct.
$100,000.
If you look at your adequacy money and your education money, there's about a $65,000 swing right there that you're receiving estimated for next year compared to what we're getting this year.
Okay, so So I asked if it was related to increase in number of students, but that's not what it is? Is that what I'm hearing?
I think
Something
that's,
other-
part- that's
I think
part of
that's
it.
a
Culmination.
Okay. So I'll just re-ask the question, and then I will make a suggestion on it. It's increasing considerably more than usual because, I don't know what the because is.
All of the above. All of those pieces that we mentioned is a factor in increasing to this point.
And this-
Yes, if we're increasing by 16, 18, 20 students, that's gonna be a huge piece of that. The transportation, if you look at your high school
Sure.
budget up 11%, that's gonna be a huge piece of that. But in addition to that, the drop in adequacy money that we're getting of about $65,000, obviously, that's another piece of that, and then the valuation of the town as well. All of those,
Okay.
that's why I said all of the above. All of those things coupled together is what's getting in.
And this is not something we're used to seeing.
Well, there are a few things there that, I mean, we're not used to seeing the high school students' enrollment go up that much. We're not normally expecting a drop in $65,000 in the adequacy grant. That's revenue from the state that we have no control over, so.
Okay.
You know, those are some changes.
And that's new.
Those are some changes.
Okay.
And I was in the transportation too, we just ended that 3-year contract, and the new bids that came in were significantly higher, and shows the more reasonable bid, but those are still higher than we previously forecasted.
Gotcha.
There's a few other things, I guess, in here that we haven't accounted for yet because we don't know where we're going to be at this point. We had a joint board meeting last night at the SAU, which the joint board meeting entails all the school districts. We're looking to currently turn back money from the preschool as well as possibly the SAU money that we have in our surplus right now. And another thing that we got an email about yesterday was the Keno. So if Nottingham does proceed with full-day kindergarten, if we do get that passed in the proposed budget, we will be possibly seeing some more money from the state per student in kindergarten. So, but those are all things that are just kind of like up in the air that I'm hoping will impact this budget in a positive way.
So this rate could go down.
It could go down.
And do you typically see it go down at this stage of the process versus when reality kicks in?
You're gonna see it when reality kicks in, and that's
Yeah,
what will
not
drive
at
that
this stage.
unexpended fund balance.
But I mean, do you usually see it go down,
Well, we
today
can't,
versus when it actually
when
hits?
we budget revenue, we don't anticipate, we don't predict that there's gonna be an unexpended surplus at the end of the year.
Okay,
So anytime there is an unexpended surplus, whether it's $1,000 or $300,000-$400,000, obviously that offsets your tax rate. When Margie was talking about our preschool, we have $100,000 that the joint board has approved to turn back to the districts. That would be 20 to 30,000 probably for Nottingham, in that range, higher than that.
There, yeah, I was gonna say
Probably
there's.
$30,000 to $40,000 in unanticipated revenue, so that would come in and offset the taxes as well. So, those are revenue sources that we know about the preschool that we will put in to adjust that down at this stage of the game. But as far as the unexpended surplus at the end of the year, we're not gonna predict anything at this point.
okay.
And that would impact, at this point next year, that would impact the taxes that you're paying at that time, which is
Right.
surplus. So it's kind of in arrears.
Mhm.
So the fiscal year closes, that unexpended fund balance and gets put back to the community to impact the tax rate.
Okay.
So-
I'm sure it'll make more sense to me as things play out, because just as the way things stand today, in my understanding, is that you would think, well, we have more kids coming into the area, we have more students coming into the area, young families moving in, you would think that's a good thing. But just looking at only this, that raises our taxes,
If they have high school students.
right? So that's why the negotiation is such a big deal with the high schools.
It is. If I could
Scott?
elaborate just a little on the, Scott, did you have something on it? No, I just wanted to elaborate a little bit on the numbers, because I happen to have them right here. So at the SAU, it's a little different than at the local district level. We cannot carry surplus funds over. Anything that's not used goes back. But at the SAU, they can carry year over year. We just finished the financial process and all of the audits are complete. And so now we know the true unexpended fund balances. And so there are calculations that Mr. Rooning does in order to determine how much we pay for preschool. So Nottingham, in the years that will be coming back, the 17 and 16, we paid in 37.7% one year and 37% the other year. So we're gonna average those two on 103,000, and that will come back, and that will impact our June 30, 2018 tax rate as that flows back. And we are currently going to have the auditors do an expanded scope, or not expanded scope, but we're gonna have some agreed upon procedures, and we're gonna look at cash flow and trying to tighten that and look for recommendations. And at that point, we can work with the SAU, and the joint board can make a policy around that balance and how much they need, because they have to expend funds before they have them. They get reimbursed for grants, so they have to expend those first. So we'll be seeing maybe a better pattern of how that can come back to the towns.
Okay.
So there is work being done to try to smooth that out as well. I don't know if that helps. I hope it does.
Did you want to add to that?
I don't want to add to the confusion, but also, you've also had some changes in your legislature and your executive branch with different priorities when it comes to education, right? So you've got some bills going through that potentially will affect your revenues, some in a positive way, some in a not so positive way. So it's sort of like the perfect, all this stuff going on at once. It is concerning to see an increase like that, but there's been so many changes
Right.
environmentally that contribute to that.
Okay. Thank you for answering my questions.
One thing that I suggested was helpful for me is, a couple of years ago, I actually just plotted a graph in Excel of the previous 5 years' budget estimates versus the actuals that were calculated after the year-end funds were returned. And, just remember that the budgeting process is an exercise in estimation. And a lot of times those estimates are scarier than the reality turns out to be at the end of that budget year. So it'd be an interesting exercise for you. I think it'd be illuminating just to look at those two lines and see how the actuals were not always as bad as they looked at before that budget year.
Okay,
So I found that helpful.
thank you.
Michael?
Yeah, one other point to consider, and it took me years to figure out exactly how this really comes down. The budget committee's scope has very little to do with the revenue side. And that just bothered me a lot. Still does, but I've come to accept it more. And so what we're doing is we're estimating how much we will need to raise so that there are funds available to be spent on the various line items and the bottom line. Yes, there are revenues that will come in, but our scope doesn't really allow us to project those into our budget.
Okay, no, I can see where it's really important to make sure we have enough. If we have too much, then that's easy to deal with, not having enough.
It's a happy
is
problem,
big deal.
yeah.
Not any, yeah. You're better off with the too much than the, which is why that number of move-ins has always been such a floating number and such a, I guess almost a sore point, just because we're so concerned about not having to have that be such a hit on the community if we get this number of move-ins. Now we're budgeting for 2. If you suddenly end up with 8, you're in the hole big time. So,
Right.
yeah.
Okay, thank you.
On that, did we ever get a good answer?
I asked for that. We had that today.
A history of the,
Marjorie done a 3-year history of the move-ins on high school.
I emailed it, I had Nancy email it to everybody, and I know I printed it, and now that you asked me that, I never grabbed it off the printer.
Was Dawn on the email? Ah, there we go.
Aw, thank you.
Cool.
So, the hard thing to try to understand with that too is that, we don't just keep track of ins and outs. We keep track of, students that may be leaving Co-Brown and going into Dover. We keep track of everybody. So in 2014 to 15, we had in Dover, we had a total that left of 5 and a total that left of 3. Sorry, I'm looking at different grades. So a total of 8 that left over.
I think maybe,
Was I on the list? Yeah.
was Dawn on that distribution? She could copy it right out.
You know what I mean? Right, so we had 1 in and 9 that left, Dover.
There's just 3 years there, and it shows by grade, and you can see ins and outs, but we're just, I think you need to see it.
We've also got a number of partials. I mean, if you take your number at the beginning of the year and you take your number at the end of the year, you can get the total of the difference, obviously.
Yeah.
But we've got numerous partials, a student that may start and go through November and then leave, and then another student comes in, or 2 students come in, and then 3 students leave. And in each of our tuition contracts, it's literally down to the day. So as soon as somebody comes, we start paying, and as soon as they leave, we stop paying. So although your ins and out numbers will give you from the start to the end numbers, it doesn't demonstrate your movement in the middle, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, in order to get an approximation that's useful, you'd really need something at least as granular as student months.
Right.
Yeah. But until we get some kind of a history in front of us, it's really hard to know if 2 is the right number or if 6 is the right number or.
Yeah, and it really, I mean, we've gone through this conversation at length over in Northwood when they were doing the capital reserve for the tuition. And, you know, we looked at the history over a number of years, and the argument always was, well, you budget for 5, and at the end of the year, we're down 6 students, because their enrollment's been going kind of in the opposite direction. And that was the history for 3 years in a row, that it was going down, and then all of a sudden, we got 16 move-ins. I mean, I'd love to tell you that there's patterns there, but, you know, it's often a moving target that's hard to hit.
We have this too, the overall, I don't know if that helps at all with, it doesn't speak to just us, but you can see just an overall pattern for several years on the high schools in general.
Mm-hmm.
What is that, enrollment rate?
Yeah.
Or enrollment numbers?
I've got a whole bunch of, I think we talked about these one other time. Looking at the kindergarten side, the high school side, everybody's enrollment numbers, including ours from '08 through '17.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you see what we do, we go up and
But the overall,
very unpredictable. Well, we're kind of predictable in our unpredictability.
We're down now because those lower grades are down.
Okay. Yeah.
It's like 3 grades worth that are down right
Yeah.
now.
What a data center.
Where did this come from?
oh, so grades and then years.
So for the most part, it looks like more students have moved out than anything, except for the 2016-17 year for Co-Brown. We had 8 move in and 2 move out.
Definitely, at times could have been out.
Exactly.
There you go.
Right.
Day to day.
So you would think you would see like, maybe like a good history, you know, like a trend, but. Sorry, Michael.
So the most recent that you have for Co-Brown is that 7 came in and 2 went out, so they're netting to 5.
8 came in.
Oh, 8, okay, missed the 1 there, sorry. And then on Dover, there was no movement in, but 6 out.
But
They'll be
those
the
six
ones that
could have
may-
gone to.
Yeah, that's,
Right.
that's another factor too.
They could be just swapping.
Or they
places.
could have just moved, or,
What I'm seeing from this page here, and that shows the 8 move-outs in 2014-15, is in total, we're losing students every year. Right? Am I misreading something there?
So except for the CBNA and,
Yeah, but we still lost 2, 3, 6,
This is just
7, 8
reflective of the
there.
move-ins and move-outs, but
Eight coming in.
not the total student population. The total student population is on the rise.
right.
And the move-ins and move-outs don't always have a direct reflection on the total student population. So, yeah, while in this given year, you've got 2014, 2015, you've got a net loss of 4 students. It may still have been a year when we had an increase in the total student population.
Right, but not from move-ins.
Right.
Predictable.
Right.
Predictable increases. And what I'm seeing here is that we really shouldn't be planning for any move-ins because it doesn't happen. It only happens in Northwood. It's a Northwood problem. Well, yeah, I think 2 is prudent. I don't think more than 2 would be something that we should plan for every year. This kind of confirms the suspicions that I had. Thank you. And it may burn us someday, and probably will in one given year. But we do have processes for going back to the town and asking for more when something of that urgent nature occurs.
And our 1.5%, that new statute that was put in place a few years ago, right, Paul?
With 60,000.
we've got 60 there.
For an emergency dire situation, that would constitute.
If we needed to overexpend our budget because of the movements, we could access that 60,000.
So there's 4 students right there. Yeah, thereabouts.
We'd have to we'd have to come here and talk to you, we'd have to talk to the commissioner, and we'd have to burn through everything, which would be highly embarrassing.
And we don't want to impact the elementary school in doing so. No, we get that.
Well, that's the other scary piece of it, is that if you've got a substantial number of move-ins, it's not coming out of your high school lines. I mean, it's coming out of your general budget, and the only space available that offers a little bit of flexibility in the budget is your elementary lines. I mean, it's a bottom line budget, but you don't have a lot of flexibility in your high school area of the budget. So that's always the difficult aspect of it.
All right.
Thanks.
Any other comments or topics anybody wants to address before we close out this section of the
can I
budget
just ask,
committee here?
was there any reason for taking the world language program out of the warrant articles other than just an additional cost?
We had asked, everyone, they can speak to it as well, but just a quick high level, we had asked the administration to give us some options as to how to implement it. And in every one of the options that were available, we would have to take away from some core topics, core, math and writing, and so I'll let you guys speak to it. But we've increased significantly our results on the Smarter Balanced Assessment, and we feel as though the students are being better prepared. And some of the things that happened is that there's been a change in the amount of time they spend on these core topics, and it's benefiting them. And so, right now, if we implemented this, we would chip away at that.
Yeah, I don't think I could add much more to that. When you add something, something has to give. And in this case, we're looking mostly at time away from other courses and other things. And no one wanted to really take away from the successes we've had until we figure out a better plan.
We wrote up for us.
Better to wait.
So
It's still a board goal.
right.
They're going to continue to pursue it, but just
So there's only so many hours in the day and they have to cut into, and with this, I mean, it's very important, but we'd like to try to continue to improve the core topic areas as well.
All right, thank you. If there's no further input, we will close the public hearing of the proposed school budget. Having no further input, do I have a motion to adjourn the public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? The public hearing is now adjourned. We will take a 5-minute recess, and then the budget committee will get back together for the deliberative session. Yes, we are still being recorded.
This must be a good one.
I think somebody's making money on this situation.
If we had more years, here, what you would end up seeing, have you ever done statistical process control?
Yeah, this is a pretty small sample.
It's very small, but my expectations that you would see a totally out of control process, reflecting that it's chaos. You cannot predict from year to year, you know. So really what they do is best effort to just have a cushion just in case, with the knowledge that it goes back to the taxpayers if it's not used.
She sent us a Google Calendar invite, it still says February 8th.
Oh, yeah, that's the
In a way to make it,
Oh, whoops.
February 8th.
any kind of force don't have to pass the taxpayers every year.
Okay, so I had it as February 7th, but it's actually February 6th.
Yeah.
Okay.
They just have a bank account set aside that they can tap into only when they need it, and they don't have to keep rolling that across the tax.
At 7.
It's just not.
Right.
We have options.
Yeah, because we wouldn't need the 11th because we're meeting now.
Yeah,
Right?
now.
So I'm gonna delete that.
It's wishes, because we have options to get the funds in.
So that's
I called her today trying to say, is there any way to get this draft out here? There were like 2
Okay.
reports on.
Then February 1st, is it if needed, right? If we needed a second town?
No, I think,
Yes.
I think two is
Whatever it was that happened in Northwood, the 16
they were just misbehaving, wouldn't they?
kids got sick of staying at home with their parents, right?
Okay.
Get sick of the
Then
homeschooling.
February 8th, public hearing for town. Yeah, I was getting confused. I'm like, Tuesday doesn't sound familiar. And the snow date for the deliberative is February 9th, Friday.
Yep.
Oh, yeah, I feel real bad.
And I have 15.
Walking around in a t-shirt.
Okay, I have that. Okay. We seem good. She could send the deliberative on there. It's kind of an important meeting.
This Sunday, I'm taking care of a brother right now, home from the hospital.
I don't know if you heard, we didn't have any heat. We didn't have any heat in the sanctuary, so we had to have it in the furnace.
What the heck I did with
Also
the
sorry,
data.
Oh, anyway, it worked out okay,
Somewhere.
but we ran out of oil.
Lord knows.
And we hadn't had service for 2 weeks, so we could have been out for a week when we didn't know.
no broken pipes or anything, no?
No, there's nothing. It was only in the sanctuary side. So that's why they didn't notice it.
Yeah.
The preschool and
It was-
there's now plumbing in in the sanctuary.
No, it was awesome. It was it was fun. We had good weather.
But it's
I was
in a
sick
panic
for some
though
of it, but
because they filled both tanks
that's a cold.
obviously
You know, it wasn't a
at the same time, and so we didn't know how long it would be before the other side would run out. But luckily they came right away, which I was surprised because I've heard people are waiting like a week for oil delivery.
Actually, my brother was in the hospital, he got home.
He was on the chair
We
lift.
called for oil and, we couldn't bring it for 2 weeks.
Yeah, so I don't know if it's just
he was dying to do it because he was
for the church we use Midway, which is
with travel, so he was excited to
and because they've always given us a really good rate.
I'm like, do you want to go?
We may be changing companies.
Yes, I was shocked because we left a message on Sunday and they I think delivered the same day. Midway, yeah. And I called them back Monday morning to say, oh, I left a message yesterday, there's nobody there, and they said, oh yeah, we already delivered to you. And I was like, oh, okay. And then I had somebody go, I had a man to go check, and it was they were able to restart it.
So Christmas
Did we
Day,
make a New Year's resolution? Is that what it was about?
Universal Studios.
It was about.
Yeah, because
So I think the way he phrased it was letting go of. He described it as like sandbags, so
they wanted it to be
not necessarily,
yeah,
not even primarily physical things, but letting go of
See, like Christmas Day.
things that are holding you back from making positive change and moving forward and doing things positively with your life. So things, everything from
yeah.
Craig would, Craig would phrase it much better
than Santa's not coming to the boat. Yeah, so
thinking that
Santa
you're not,
I said, can you come early?
that you don't have enough or you're not doing
It all
enough.
worked out.
Or things that are negative thoughts that are bringing you down. And that
So it was a big family discussion like 6 months ago.
That's a good point, though. Thank you for telling me.
You know, something that everything's
Things I gotta let go.
let go,
Yeah.
letting go.
It's nice to be one.
Do more.
Yep, and then we had 2 stop in the Bahamas.
Freeing up.
One at a private island that Royal Caribbean owns, and then
Mental space and energy.
was it really
Brother who's home alone, he's just got out of the hospital. Fucking DUI, so he's losing his license for 3 years. And who do you think's taking care of him?
Where does he live?
It wasn't really
Next door to me.
the only time on the
Helping him
boat
with
that it was kind
meals
of
and
frustrating
cleaning
is,
and
like they would
running
have,
errands for him and
they had up
doctor's
on the 6th
appointments.
deck,
He
they had
just,
this big, they called
he
the
wants
sea
company, he doesn't want to be in that big house with both his daughters
and
are
sometimes they would
gone.
close it off to the roller skating.
I passed away a couple of years ago.
Everybody on the show wanted to go, so you kind of had to do it like 45 minutes
Very
early. I
draining
had to wait quite a
situation.
while to do the
Is
roller
it just the two of
They
you
were just
from
on the cars.
the family, or
Some of that stuff where it's like a confined
He has issues too.
in the same? Do they all live?
But everything
Yeah,
was,
he
was
shares
fine.
house with me. My daughter just moved back.
That crowded.
Now all these family
The boat was really big enough.
members that need help and support and money.
It's called the English.
No, this is my first year too.
It leaves in Jersey.
Yeah.
One of the reasons that we did this was we didn't want to have to
Missing things and public meetings like this that I don't have to be at.
Yeah. Cruise to Jersey for like 2 days, right? Yeah.
Your term up, or how long is your term on
The way
here?
down it was super smooth. I mean,
Yeah, so you have to decide whether you're going to run again, right? I think there's
big storm. They were forecasting 12.
It's quite a number of them. There are 4 people, I think.
Yeah, I don't know how much good I can do here. It seems like all these costs are fixed.
Carol and I are
It was only like 3 hours.
I think there's a lot of things I would have liked to have added if my fixed costs were going up so much.
We played a video game.
On his tablet. It was like, it
lined up.
was, you know, his eyes trying to
She was a school board member. She took off this year. In fact, she was trying to recruit new
Be the
people
governor and
to
legislature.
town politics.
Pass a broad-based tax and designated education.
They have a vested interest in the school. I've got 3 young kids. So, but
That
I
probably won't happen this year.
involved with her. I'm on the board for New Hampshire Children's Trust. So
It's like, they all take this pledge, it's like,
they spend a lot of time. They're very dedicated on the school.
On our honeymoon, we did a
We're
first
very
year one night
dedicated
where
between
like,
Sue and Jackie.
yeah, I think the rest of them are
I'm like, I'm not leaving this room. I can't take this room.
education.
They set a
Little
very
envious.
high bar.
While we've been sitting here, I
All for
downloaded
property taxes.
a Plex server at home.
Onto your phone?
Onto the
Hey, we
phone.
need more funding for
It does, transcode. It reformats it to fit the
Well, they
tiny
would pay
screen.
for the school, I mean.
Oh, so if you were to try to use
develop that
that
land
now
up on Route
and send
4.
it through like a projector?
No, it's actually on the
I don't deal with motion.
No, I know, but if you were to,
But so it was
If you were to-
really
if I
like
played it
half
now,
a day.
We would have, you
if you
know,
play it now, it'll look great on the screen. If you were to send it through like a projector and then project it on the wall. it'd be-
right. Yeah, it'd be kind of blurry, grainy. But yeah, it does the math
no
to,
shortage of money,
Right.
but they didn't.
You know,
to business.
back to business, yes.
It's hard, it's a definite balance.
Yeah.
You know, trying to.
And thank God didn't.
All right, we're gonna bring this, start the deliberative session of the Budget Committee. I want to thank the SAU and the school board for their participation. The process to approve the budget is we're going to go through the entire budget again. This time we will go page by page. And if anybody on the committee, if there are any recommendations and changes, we will take those recommendations from the committee to increase or decrease any line items or leave as is. Please identify the line number, line item, and amount to change the line. If an increase or decrease is requested, then we will call for a motion, get a second, proceed with discussion, restate the current motion, and then vote whether to accept the change to the line item, and make sure that Dawn records the vote. Announce if if the motion carries or not. At the end of the last page of the total proposed budget, we will call for a motion to accept the total proposed budget, and we will include the amount. We will go to a discussion and then vote all in favor of approving the budget and the amount. So, and then we will go through the individual sheets of the revenue, the default budget, the warrant articles, the official documents, and then that's it. So if we want to pull out your proposed budget, and we'll go. So deliberative session for the Nottingham School District proposed budget. Page 1. Do we have any changes, increases, decreases to address? No? Page 2. Does anybody have any recommended changes to the budget? Okay. Page 3. No recommended changes. Move on to page 4. Any recommended changes? Having none, we'll move on to page 5. Any recommended changes? Having none, we'll move on to page 6. Let me know if I'm going too fast or too slow. Any changes to page 6? Having none, we'll move on to page 7. Any recommended changes? None, we'll move on to page 8. Any changes on page 8? None. Page 9. Do we have any changes to page 9? Having none, page 10.
I have a question on page 10.
Mm-hmm.
Contracted service behavior technician, the service is no longer required. And just have a note here of what has changed, where it was previously required, but now it's not.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my question, I don't know the answer to that.
Anything
Student need.
special ed, yeah, it's
Special
based
ed.
on student needs.
Right.
If a student arrives, or if there is a student in district that has a special need that needs to be accommodated, the school district is obligated. Am I saying it right?
You are absolutely.
Okay.
Even if it's one,
School
even if
district.
it's one student.
Right.
So previously you had one student, let's say, and now you don't?
Right.
You could,
They may have moved to high school, they may have moved out of town, their needs may have
Okay.
changed.
well, there was another line that increased
Yeah.
or decreased.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Any changes to page 10? Having none, page 11. Any changes to page 11? No changes, page 12. Any changes to page 12? None, page 13.
Can I just ask one quick question on page
Sure.
12? We have our own curriculum person that works for our schools, and the SAU also has a curriculum person, is that correct?
Nope. The SAU works with curriculum, of course, but there is not a curriculum person at the SAU.
Oh, I thought they had a full-time curriculum.
They have, no, they have a superintendent, they have an assistant superintendent, that's also doing, special education services director, so doing both. Then an assistant special education person, and a business administrator, and then other support staff around accounting. They have HR, they have 3.6 bookkeepers, an accounting manager, two psychologists, so that kind of thing. But we made the decision in Nottingham that we definitely wanted a curriculum director, and we wanted it at an administrative level, so we attribute a lot of our success recently to that focus.
Yeah, so the person who was here a couple meetings ago was
Jude.
just for Nottingham's curriculum.
Yes.
Jude Shabbat, yeah.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Page 13. Any changes to page 13? No changes. Page 14. Any changes to page 14? Having none, page 15. Any changes to page 15? Having none, page 16. Any changes to page 16? None. Page 17. Any changes to page 17? No changes. Page 18.
I got a quick question. So with Fairpoint, when does that contract run out? And did Chris talk to you about maybe joining in on the town's consolidation of phone services?
We haven't had conversations with Chris about consolidating with the town. We did have a discussion about on the internet side with the hookup that had been raised, and there might have been additional costs there. But I don't recall at a board meeting having a conversation in regard to hooking in with town services.
Or just, yeah, like combining forces to get a better rate?
Okay, I think that's something that we typically are interested in, you know, if we can have some cost effectiveness there.
Yeah, okay.
Any changes to page 18? No changes. Page 19. Any changes to page 19? No changes. Page 20.
I do have a question. I don't have an issue, it's just a question. On the repairs and maintenance on flushing, I think you mentioned that that needs to be flushed annually? Okay, I wrote that down as a note. It says flushed annually, so but that's not true.
My husband does it for work.
Okay.
It's on a cycle. It's
Okay.
not annually. I don't know what the year is, but I want to say like every 5 years.
Okay, and really that was my question. If it's annual, then why is it bumping up the budget?
No,
as much
no,
as it is?
there's a cycle. Any
Okay.
commercial buildings need to go through it.
Okay.
I know that when we talked about it in the budget, it wasn't considered annual. I do have the facilities plan here. I can poke through this as we move, and I think I'll find the schedule for it.
Okay, again, it was just, you know, if it really is annual, then why is it bumping it up?
No,
Okay.
I want to say
All right.
3. This is
Okay.
my 3rd year on here. I haven't seen this before, so
Okay.
I want to say it's a 3-year cycle.
Okay, all right.
Any changes to page 20? No changes. Page 21. Any changes to page 21? No changes. Page 22. Any changes to page 22? No changes. Page 23. Any changes to page 23? No changes. Page 24.
Chairman, I was to suggest we reduce that tuition to Cole Brown and cut it in half. That would cause all kinds of problems, wouldn't it?
They're all meeting over at your house instead.
So this increase, these are students that are currently in the system. They're not incoming from outside areas. They're in the system, moving through the system.
Or anticipating next year, I thought. Next year's for next
Right,
year.
but we're identifying students that are moving out of 8th grade, and we're removing students that are graduating. So yes, it's a closed system.
Okay, so you should have a pretty good fix on that.
Yes, that's usually good.
Has the guidance counselor finished the survey of 8th grade students and where they're kind of expecting? I know Co-Brown, not applications, registration paperwork was due. I'm just wondering.
Well, I know we were estimating the 43 based on conversations with the students, but I don't think everything is completely finalized. We'll probably hear about it within the next month or so.
If that number were to change between now and the deliberative session, could that be adjusted, or is it too late at that point?
You can adjust up or down 10% at deliberative, so there could be an adjustment
At
made
the
there.
deliberative session, it would have to be.
Yeah, if there was some material difference. It would we would have had them accounted for in Dover too, so if
Right.
there were just a slide that way, or a slide to Dover, so
Right.
we could make adjustments if that occurs. I don't usually see it, but
But we also have the potential of the tuition rates being a little bit fluid.
I think the Co-Brown rate
Co-Brown's
was
fixed.
fixed, right?
Around fixed, we get that earlier, but Dover, we have an estimate, and, so they have to meet with, their board meets, because they're a city, they meet with city council, and they have some caps and other structures, so we could get another number, and they know that we obviously prefer to see it lower, so, usually there's some wiggle room there, we'll see what happens.
Are any of these high schools busting at the seams with students?
Based on what I can see, I would say no. Dover's building a new building. I think their capacity was gonna be 1,500 on that building. I could be off, in fact, by 100 or so. I'm looking at 08, they had 1618, and in 2016, they had 1312. Co-Brown is at 684 in 08, and they're now at 710. I think they view their capacity to be maybe I think that's kind of where they like to be. They could probably go a little bit north of that. They're about the same size as an Oyster River, that kind of thing, so.
But it wouldn't be a giant leap to say that any one of these schools would like to have all of our students, if they could.
Yeah, that's true. I think that some of the one thing I think that we do have going for us, so we don't have our own high school, which would be a huge expense, and certainly you need to do a good job with it to make it worthwhile. But on the other hand, we have the choice, which I do think is nice, and if you look at other towns like Barrington, they're doing the same thing, so they afford their community the choice, and that sort of offsets not having the local piece, so.
Right.
But yes, I'm sure they would all prefer to have as many as they can. What I can see, Oyster River, though, might be getting closer to capacity, and I don't think they take 100% from outside. They have some lottery-type stuff.
Is that Dover?
That's Oyster
Oyster
River is.
River. We don't send any.
Yeah,
Okay.
We don't send any students.
Any changes to page 24? Having no changes, page 25. Any changes to page 25? No changes, page 26.
Not much to change there.
Any changes to page 26?
I'd like to change that 21.76%.
Yeah. Yeah, transportation definitely a big cost. Yeah. No changes to page 26. All right. We will call a motion to accept the total proposed budget for the Nottingham School District of $12,701,259. Do I have a motion to accept?
Should be a motion to recommend, Dawn. Or-
It is a motion to recommend, yes. Sorry.
What?
We're amending your motion.
It is a motion to recommend.
To recommend, I'm sorry, to
Proposed
recommend
budget
the
of-
proposed budget. Okay, do I have a motion to recommend the proposed budget of $12,701,259?
I will move.
Second. All in favor? What's that? Yep. The default budget, I don't have, do we have to go, we don't have to go through every page, right? We're just going through the total. Okay. Yeah, so, page 12 of the default budget. The default budget for, it's the what did you say, recommend? To recommend the grand total for the default budget of $12,679,654. Do I have a motion? Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
In favor?
Motion has been accepted.
So that's just a vote that you accept the default budget as calculated.
As currently calculated, yeah.
So those two votes together, Mitch, that actually kind of cover article number 2, which is both the operating and the default budget.
You wanna go through warrant articles?
We have a revenue page. that we need to-
I'm sorry?
We need to approve the revenue page.
Revenue page. Yeah. Oh, right. So, on the, revenue page, school board estimated revenues, am I reading the right line here? Catastrophic aid of $65,429. The state child nutrition estimated revenue of $2,000. A revenue from federal sources for the school lunch special milk of $45,000. Revenue from federal sources, the Medicaid reimbursement of $60,000. Revenue from local sources, rent for $1,000. Interest income of $100. School lunch of $90,000 for a total revenue of $263,529. Do I have a motion to accept the revenues in the amount of $263,529?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
And in favor?
So that's to accept the estimated.
Yes.
Okay.
Estimated revenues. We did the default.
articles.
And the warrant articles. All right. So warrant Article 2, as we mentioned, has been addressed with the regards to the proposed budget and the default budget. Warrant Article 3, and I'll go through these, to see if the Nottingham School District will vote to raise and appropriate up to the sum of $50,000 to be added to the Building Repair Capital Reserve Fund previously established. This sum to come from June 30th, 2018, unassigned fund balance available for transfer on July 1. No additional amount to be raised from taxation. The current anticipated balance at December 31st, 2017 is $86,364.52. The school board recommends this appropriation by a vote of 5-0. The budget committee has not yet voted on this. There's no additional tax impact for this article. Do I have a motion to accept? What's that? Or to recommend? Call to motion to recommend Article 3 as read.
Motion to recommend Article 3 as read.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor of Article 3?
And in favor?
Article 4, to see if Nottingham School District will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $30,000 for the purpose of improvements to the library program. The school board recommends this appropriation by a 5-0 vote. The tax impact, if this article passes, is 5 cents per $1,000. Do I have a motion to recommend Article 4 as read?
So moved.
Do I have a second? All in favor of Article 4 as read?
And in favor?
9.
9? Opposed, Commissioner?
Oh, I'm sorry. Oppose? Article 5, to see if the Nottingham School District will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of up to $15,000 to be added to the Grounds Improvement Capital Reserve Fund previously established. This sum to come from June 30th, 2018 unassigned fund balance available for transfer on July 1st. Current anticipated balance on 12/31/17 is $28,122.88. The school board recommends this appropriation by a vote of 5-0. There is no additional impact if the article passes. Do I have a motion to recommend Article 5 as read?
Motion to recommend Article 5 as read.
Second.
Second. All in favor?
And in favor?
Article 6, to see if the Nottingham School District will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of up to $20,000 to be added to Textbook Capital Reserve Fund previously established. This sum to come from June 30th, 2018 unassigned fund balance available to transfer on July 1. No additional amount to be raised from taxation. The current anticipated balance at 12/31/17 is $40,024.15. The school board recommends this appropriation by a 5-0 vote. There is no additional tax impact if this article passes. Do I have a motion to recommend Article 6 as read?
I'll move.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor of Article 6 as read?
And in favor?
That is all of the warrant articles. Next step is to establish a deadline with the SAU to have the documents signed.
You want to do it or you want to do it? Not until the 25th. So because of the state requirement to submit the budget and warrant article information into their database, it requires an auditor review by the DRA. So the DRA takes that information, verifies that it's all correct, and then approves that information, which then is spit out on a state form. It's a 232 MS, it's an MS form. It happens every year. That form hasn't yet received approval. So sometime, I think Marjorie said by Friday, she's hoping for that form to be approved. She'll print it out, drop it off, and I'll need you to come in over the next week to sign that, in order for the school board and the SAU to get those printed and published. So, I don't think there's any vote. Do we vote on it? We haven't-
Today's, we've already voted.
This data that shows up on the form.
Right. One lesson I learned last year, that just for your benefit, is that the printout that comes back from DRA, they categorize things a little differently than what we have in our printouts that come from the SAU, so just verify all the grand totals.
Okay.
That's the important bit.
Right.
If the
Yeah, if
totals
there's
are
stuff in the
different,
middle,
then there's a
right.
problem somewhere.
Stuff in the middle can
We'll
move
do
around.
that first as well.
Do you need all of us to sign or just?
So you will notify us, yeah, we all need to sign, right? Yeah.
There is a preference, yes, to have everybody stop in, over the next week, once, or, who's arrived here, for you to sign it.
So you will notify us
Once
as to
it
when
gets
you
here,
get
yeah,
it?
Marjorie, like, I think she said Friday, but it will be next Monday.
So be on the lookout for that.
Yeah, and then just, I will make sure that there are plenty of available hours in the day for you guys to come in and sign. You're late on Wednesday next week up until 6 o'clock. If I know you're gonna be here like on Tuesday at 5, I'll stay, so just let me know your schedule.
If it helps people with day jobs that can only come in during the evening, if you want me to take the copy over to the library and sit there on a library evening time, I can do that.
Are you looking to get out of the house?
He likes late nights, so.
And you'll have the same issue with the town form. So this is not new, it happens every year with this new system, and it's kind of what we come to expect.
Okay. So be on the lookout for that call to come down and sign the document. And I just want to remind the public that the school deliberative session will be at the Nottingham Elementary School in the gymnasium on Tuesday, February 6th at 7 p.m. with a potential snow date of Friday, February 9th. And the current review of the proposed budget is now adjourned. Do we have any outside discussions or comments that, roundtable? Yes.
I would like to commend the school board and the administration on a fine job of dealing with the inevitability of excessive costs to high school tuition and managing the rest of the budget accordingly. I think that was really well done, and that's probably why there weren't any changes to the budget.
Yeah, likewise, I think that, there was quite a few changes made, obviously, from version 1, which we saw several months ago. You all made some pretty significant concessions without adversely affecting the students and the community, so I think it's, hats off to the SAU and the school board for all your hard work. We appreciate it. Any other business?
Yeah, I wanted to, I wish I could have done it while he was here, but Dr. Godomsky has recently accepted a position as a superintendent at Summersworth. So I wanted to congratulate him on that and thank him for his service to Nottingham students.
And while we actually have Mr. Rooning here, Mr. Rooning, the joint board elected him to become the superintendent effective July 1st, so.
Congratulations. Very nice.
I feel that, you know, having the continuity and everything is gonna be wonderful,
Absolutely,
so.
that's gonna be great. Did you want to say something?
Can I grab a plug since we're on camera? So on January 29th, it was rescheduled. If you check the Nottingham School Board Facebook page, we have a nationally renowned speaker coming to present on internet safety. They're going to present to the 7th and 8th grades in all 3 districts at the Northwood School during the day. But at night, at 6 o'clock, there's a parent night that's open to any parent with any age kid. I think if you check out Katie Greer's website and her resume, you'll see that she's been on Meredith Vieira, The View, the NAC on ABC News. She's trains police departments and works really well with parents from kindergarten and preschool age all the way up to high school. I encourage any parent in this district to take advantage of that opportunity and fill that gym up at the Northwood School, and hopefully gain some information and skills to help your children navigate the digital world.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. And it's funny because I was having just that exact conversation with some parents this past weekend about internet safety and some of the things that we're seeing some of these kids doing. And one of the comments was, boy, I wish the school would do something. And 24 hours later, we get an email saying that this is coming through, so.
Yeah, so it'd be nice to see everybody.
What time is that?
I believe it's at 6 o'clock, but check the Facebook page.
Yeah.
The student, I don't want parents to think that just because they don't have 7th and 8th grade students that they are welcome to attend, because they are. And I think they would, any parent of any student at any age would get.
They're getting their hands on electronics at a younger age.
I know she's come before, correct, for adults.
She's
She
come,
hasn't done
yeah, she's come before, and what we try to do is like pool our resources. We don't have a large audience, so if we get those 3 schools together and share costs, and plus they're going to school together after that. You know, I'd like to offer it to other grades, but I think 7th and 8th grade is critical, just from having an 8th grader and going to review.
Scott, what was that date again? I'm sorry, I didn't.
It was rescheduled to the 29th.
Right.
January?
January?
January, the end of this month.
Are we still meeting Thursday?
Les, I looked in our facilities management and I didn't see Glycol, but I can ask at the next meeting how often it's scheduled. I'm just,
Oh,
Hearing,
that
so
was the
that's
snow
today.
day
Yeah,
for
snow
tonight.
day, so.
So we're not meeting Thursday.
Right, so we do not, I'm sorry. Just to go over the calendar, we do not have a meeting this coming Thursday. The next meeting is January 25th at 7 PM. We will go over the second draft of the proposed town budget. And we will have, I believe, department heads are gonna be coming too, library, fire, police, okay. Yeah, because we have a new library director, so that'll be good. Excellent. Does anybody have anything else they want to cover? Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn?
Second? All in favor?
The ayes have it.
The ayes have it.
That was me. Yep.
The meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.